They skipped my wedding. That's the first thing I remember when I think about that day. Not the flowers, not the music, not even Rachel's smile. But those 3 empty chairs in the front row. My parents' seats, my brother's, still lined perfectly, like they were waiting for ghosts that never showed up. The string quartet played something slow and gentle, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heartbeat. Rachel's hand was warm in mine, steady even when mine trembled. She looked beautiful, calm, radiant, and I tried to match her peace. But I couldn't, because deep down I already knew. They weren't stuck in traffic. They weren't sick. They just didn't come. I'm Cody Brooks, 33 years old, born and raised right here in Franklin, Tennessee. I've worn uniforms, built houses, buried friends. But that afternoon, standing at the altar, I felt smaller than I had in years. Rachel smiled at me as we exchanged vows. Her voice didn't waver once. Mine almost did. Every word felt heavier, like a promise I was making not just to her, but to myself. That I'd never again chase the kind of love that had to be earned. When the minister said, "You may kiss the bride," the guests clapped politely. I remember scanning the crowd out of habit, looking for a glimpse of my mother's soft curls, my father's stiff posture, my brother's smug grin. Nothing. Just those 3 empty chairs. Afterward, while the guests lingered over slices of cake and cheap champagne, people tried to fill the silence with excuses. Maybe their flight was delayed, someone offered. They'll probably come for the reception, another said. Rachel caught my eye across the room and gave a small shake of her head. The kind that says, "Don't pretend, not today." Later that evening, when the lights dimmed and the last guest left, Rachel found me outside by the fence staring into the quiet. The stars were bright that night. Franklin has a way of making even disappointment look peaceful. "They'll regret it someday," she whispered, wrapping her arms around my waist. Her voice was gentle, like she wanted to believe it herself. I shook my head. "No," I said. "They already did. They just don't know it yet." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The air smelled like honeysuckle and rain, and somewhere in the distance, a train passed through the valley. I remember thinking how far away everything sounded, how far away I felt. Back inside, our wedding photos sat unfinished on the table, empty frames waiting for pictures that didn't exist yet. Rachel gathered them, careful and quiet, like she was handling something fragile. Maybe she was. I walked upstairs alone, still wearing my suit. The bed was covered with gifts and cards from well-meaning people who didn't know what to say. I sat down, loosened my tie, and reached for my phone. Half out of habit, half out of hope. There it was. A single message. From my brother. We couldn't make it. Maybe next time, that was all. No explanation, no apology. Just 7 words. Cold, simple, and exactly what I expected. I stared at the screen until it dimmed, then whispered, "There won't be a next time." Outside, the wind picked up. A gust rattled the old oak against the window, a sound that used to mean comfort when I was a kid. Now, it just sounded like the past closing its door. Rachel called my name softly from downstairs, asking if I was coming to bed. I didn't answer right away. I needed one last moment to let the truth settle in. That day was supposed to be the beginning of a new life. Turns out it was the end of an old one. The months after the wedding felt quieter than I expected. Not sad, just stripped down, like the world had decided to stop pretending. Rachel and I moved into a small house on the edge of Franklin, one with more cracks than comfort. But it was ours, and fixing it gave me something to do with my hands, something that didn't depend on anyone's approval. That's how I met Mr. Harris. He was a retired carpenter, a fellow veteran, the kind of man who measured twice and spoke once. I started helping him on weekends, patching roofs, sanding porch rails, learning how to make something stay upright even when everything around it leaned. "Most people," he said once, tapping his hammer against a crooked beam, "they just cover the flaw and call it good. But you don't build a life that way, son. Not one that lasts." He never talked much about his time in the service, and I didn't talk much about mine. But there was an understanding between us, a silence that wasn't empty. Harris worked like the world still needed saving, one plank at a time. Rachel loved him. She'd bring us sandwiches and sit on the porch, laughing when Harris teased me for measuring too long before cutting. "Perfection's a moving target, Brooks," he'd chuckle. "Aim for honest instead." Through that old man, I learned patience again. Learned that even broken things can hold steady if you set them right. When Harris got sick, he refused to slow down. "Can't stop building while there's light left," he told me. We finished one last job together, restoring a veteran's old farmhouse outside town. On the final day, he pressed something into my hand, a wooden measuring stick. Worn smooth from years of work, the words carved into it caught the sunlight just right. Build straight. Even when no one's watching. He passed away that winter. The town showed up for his funeral. Every man with dust on his boots. Every woman with stories of a door Harris had fixed for free. I stood beside the grave, the ruler heavy in my pocket, and made him a promise I didn't say out loud. After that, I built my own company, Brooks Home Restoration. It started small, one job, one client, one chance not to mess it up. Rachel handled the calls, the invoices, and the smiles. I handled the rest. Word spread fast. Franklin has a way of noticing quiet effort. A teacher's roof here, a widow's fence there. Soon folks started saying, "Call that Brooks boy. He'll do it right." I stopped checking my phone for messages from people who never called. I stopped needing anyone to see what I was building. Rachel would come by the sites with coffee in hand, and that proud half-smile of hers. "You're getting a name around town," she'd say. I'd shrug, pretending not to care, but deep down I did. Because for the first time it felt like the town saw me, not the shadow of my family's name. By the second year, I had 2 employees, a young apprentice named Tommy, barely 19, and an old pickup with more rust than paint. Business was good enough that Rachel started talking about taking a weekend trip. "You need a break," she said. I told her I'd rest when the wood stopped warping in the Tennessee heat. Then one afternoon, I was up on a ladder repainting a client's porch when I heard Rachel's voice calling from the yard, bright and excited. "Cody, you're not going to believe this." She was holding the cordless phone like it carried gold. "A reporter from Channel 4 just called. They want to feature your work." I wiped the sweat from my face, blinked against the sun, and felt the corner of my mouth lift. "Well," I said, resting the ruler in my pocket. "That's new." They called the segment Veteran Builds Homes and Hope in Franklin. I didn't even know the reporter had a title ready until the story aired that Friday evening. Rachel made popcorn and insisted we sit on the couch like kids watching a movie premiere. Tommy, my young apprentice, texted me a dozen times. "You're on TV, boss." I tried to act indifferent, but when I saw my name flash across the bottom of the screen, Cody Brooks, Brooks Home Restoration, something shifted inside me. The camera showed me sanding an old window frame. My sleeves rolled up, the torch-red 2024 Corvette Stingray parked behind me like a quiet witness. The reporter's voice narrated over it. A Franklin veteran turning abandoned houses into homes again. Hard work, heart, and a promise to build straight, even when no one's watching. Rachel grinned when she heard that line. She knew where it came from, the words carved into Harris's old measuring stick. When the camera cut to me speaking, I didn't sound like I remembered. My voice came out calm, almost softer than I meant it to. "I guess I just wanted to give back," I'd said. "Franklin's been good to me. Feels right to return the favor." The piece lasted 2 minutes, but in a town like ours, that's enough to make you local news for a month. The next morning, strangers waved when I drove by. Mrs. Coleman from the bakery sent free muffins to the shop with a note. "You make Franklin proud. Mr. Brooks." Even the mayor's office called, asking if I'd consider restoring the old Veterans Hall. Rachel teased me that evening, saying, "Guess I'm married to a celebrity now." I told her I was still just the guy who fixed broken porches. Only difference was, now people noticed. For once it felt good. Not loud, not showy, just good. What I didn't know was that, hundreds of miles away, 2 other people were watching the same broadcast. In a quiet living room outside Atlanta, my parents sat side by side on a leather couch. The television glowed across their polished floors. My father leaned back, arms crossed, jaw tight. My mother sat forward, squinting like she was trying to see through the screen. When the reporter mentioned Brooks Home Restoration, my father muttered, "He's doing well." My mother didn't look away from the Corvette parked behind me. Maybe it's time we called him. The silence between them said more than either would admit. That night, after dinner, Rachel and I sat on the porch steps. The air smelled like sawdust and honeysuckle, my favorite kind of evening. She was scrolling through comments from the news page, words like inspiration, humble, hero. I told you people would love it, she said. Yeah, I said quietly. I just hope the right ones see it. I didn't mean it the way it sounded, but she tilted her head, catching the hint anyway. You still think about them, she said softly. Sometimes, I admitted. Mostly when something good happens. Old habits, I guess. She reached over, resting her hand on mine. Let them miss it, Cody. They had their chance. The night grew still. Fireflies blinked over the yard. I almost believed peace could last. Then my phone lit up on the porch railing. Mom calling. The name glowed against the dark like a wound reopening. Rachel's hand froze around mine. Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. Are you going to answer? The ringtone echoed through the kitchen window behind us. The same tone I'd set years ago. One I never bothered to change. I stared at the screen until the light dimmed. My reflection faint in the glass. Not yet, I said quietly. But the phone kept ringing. The phone stopped ringing that night, but the silence it left behind was louder. For hours I stared at it sitting on the counter as if ignoring it might make it disappear. It didn't. By morning I'd convinced myself not to care. But when it rang again the next evening, I answered before I even realized what I was doing. Cody. Just hearing her voice felt strange, like opening an old door that should have stayed shut. Mom, I said. My tone flat. We need to talk. Her words were clipped, efficient. Family meeting, tomorrow, 2 o'clock. 6 years of silence. And she sounded like she was inviting me to Sunday dinner. I waited, hoping she'd add something human. How are you, son? I'm sorry, we miss you. But all I heard was my father's voice in the background, low and commanding. This isn't optional, she added, as if I'd asked for a choice. I let the quiet stretch. What's this about? It's complicated. We'll explain tomorrow. The line clicked dead before I could answer. Rachel had been standing in the doorway the whole time, dish towel in her hands, her face unreadable. Let me guess, she said softly. Your mom? I nodded. She sounded urgent. Rachel crossed her arms. You don't owe them anything, Cody. I know. I rubbed the back of my neck, staring out the window toward the dark. But I need to see them. Not for them, for me, to stop remembering them like they were someone else. She hesitated. And if they hurt you again? I smiled without humor. Then I'll know I was right to stay gone. That night I barely slept. Every creak in the house felt like a memory knocking on the walls. Rachel lay beside me, breathing slow and even, but I knew she wasn't asleep either. Around 3 a.m., she turned to me. Promise me one thing, she whispered. Anything. Don't go there hoping they'll change. I won't, I said. And for once, I meant it. By morning, the Tennessee sky was overcast, that flat, gray kind of day where even the light feels tired. I grabbed my jacket, keys, and Harris's old ruler. I didn't know why I took it. Maybe I just needed to carry something that still meant what it said. The Corvette Stingray sat in the driveway, glistening from the night's rain. Rachel walked out onto the porch, coffee mug in hand. You sure about this? No, I said. But I'm going anyway. She set her mug down and touched my arm. Remember who you are when you walk in there. I will. The drive to the old Brooks house was only 40 minutes, but it felt longer. The closer I got, the more the landscape blurred into half-forgotten snapshots. The gas station where Dad taught me to check tire pressure. The diner where Mom used to order pie but never finish it. When I turned onto the old road, the gravel made that same crunch beneath the tires that it did the day I left for deployment 12 years ago. That sound had always meant freedom back then. Now it just sounded like a warning. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Pale siding, cracked shutters, an overgrown yard that said no one cared enough to keep things straight. The porch swing creaked in the wind, still crooked on one chain. I used to tell Dad I'd fix it someday. Guess he never did. I killed the engine and sat there for a moment, watching the curtains shift behind the glass. Someone had already seen me, The front door opened slowly. My father stepped out first, older now, but with the same cold precision in his eyes. He looked me over, not like a son, but like a man inspecting a purchase he wasn't sure he wanted. "You've done well for yourself, son." No hug. No warmth, just appraisal. I met his stare, steady and calm. "I guess I have." He moved aside, holding the door open just enough. "Let's talk inside." The air inside that house hadn't changed. Stale, heavy, and full of everything we never said. I could still smell the lemon polish on the furniture, the same brand my mother used when I was a kid. Back then, she cared about appearances more than truth. I guess nothing changed. They were all waiting in the dining room when I stepped in. My father sat at the head of the table, posture perfect, fingers laced in front of him like a man presiding over a courtroom. My mother perched beside him, hands folded tightly in her lap. And then there was my brother, Evan, slouched in his chair, pretending to look casual, but failing miserably. It was the same table they'd hosted every holiday dinner, every argument, every silent evening where I'd tried to earn a word of approval. Only this time, I didn't sit. My father gestured to the empty chair across from him. "You can sit, son. I'll stand." He didn't argue. He just reached for a folder beside him and slid a stack of papers across the polished wood. Mortgage statements, bank letters, debt summaries. The weight of their mistakes. "We're in a bit of a bind," he began, voice steady. "The economy hasn't been kind to the firm, and your brother's business investment didn't pan out as expected." I didn't touch the papers. "And you called me why?" My mother's voice softened, rehearsed. "We're family, Cody. You can't just watch us lose everything." The word family rolled off her tongue like a weapon. I met her eyes, calm and cold. "You watched me lose everything years ago," I said. "Remember my wedding day?" The color drained from her face, but she said nothing. My father leaned forward, jaw tightening. "That's different." "We had our reasons," Evan scoffed. "Oh, come on. You're really still mad about that?" I turned to him. "No, I'm past being mad," he smirked, leaning back. "Good. Then maybe you can sign a check and we can all move on." My mother shot him a warning glance, but it was too late. "You think you're better than us now," Evan added. "Because you got lucky? Built a few houses and bought yourself a shiny red car." I almost smiled. "No, I just stopped being less." The words hung there. My father's hand twitched against the table. "You've changed," he said flatly. "I had to," I replied. "You made sure of that." For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the faint ticking of the kitchen clock filled the room. The same clock that once counted down the minutes to every disappointment. Then my mother's voice broke the silence, a desperate softness creeping back in. "Please, Cody, think about your brother's children. They shouldn't suffer because of what?" I interrupted. "Because of his mistakes? Or yours?" Evan's chair scraped back violently. "You're not the only one who struggled, you know. You think wearing a uniform makes you a saint?" I stared at him, unblinking. "No, Evan. It just taught me the difference between sacrifice and selfishness." That was when my father stood. "Enough," his voice cut the air. "You've made your point," I nodded slowly. "Good. Then I'll make one more." I reached for the papers, looked at the numbers, then placed them back down untouched. "You're asking for help because you think I owe you something. But the truth is you never gave me anything worth owing." My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father's stayed cold. Evan muttered something under his breath, but I was already turning away. I walked to the door, the sound of my boots on the hardwood echoing behind me. "Where are you going?" My father demanded. "Home," I said. "Somewhere I actually built something." The screen door creaked shut behind me. The wind outside felt lighter than the air I'd left behind. I got into the Corvette, the leather still warm from the sun, and sat there for a long minute staring at the old house, the same one where I learned what silence really meant. Then I picked up my phone and made a quiet call. "Move up the launch date for the foundation," I said. "Tomorrow morning." There was a pause on the line. "You sure?" my lawyer asked. I looked back once more at the house. "Yeah," I said. "I'm done waiting for the right time." They didn't expect me to come back. That much was clear from the look on my father's face when he opened the door. My mother was standing behind him, hands already clasped like she was rehearsing forgiveness. Evan's truck was parked crooked in the driveway, engine still warm. He hadn't even bothered to turn it off. I stepped past them without waiting for an invitation. The same house, the same furniture, the same air, thick with perfume and pretense. "We didn't think you'd show," my father said. "I like to finish things I start," I replied, setting a brown folder on the dining table. "And since you seemed so eager for my help, I figured we might as well make it official." Their eyes followed the folder like it might bite. Evan leaned forward. "That looks like a check to me." Not quite. I opened the folder slowly and spread out the documents. Crisp, clean pages stamped with legal seals. The header at the top read, "The Harris Home Project." My mother frowned. "What's this?" "It's a non-profit I've been building for the last 2 years," I said evenly. "Funds are going toward restoring homes for veterans and families struggling to get back on their feet. It'll cover repairs, training programs, materials, and apprenticeships across Tennessee." Evan let out a sharp laugh. "So you're just giving it all away? What kind of business plan is that?" "The kind that makes sense to me," I said. "That's where the money's going, to men who came home with nothing. Like I once did." The room fell silent. You could almost hear the paper breathe. My mother's lips parted, her voice trembling between confusion and guilt. "But what about us? What about you?" I asked. "We're family," she said softly, almost pleading. I met her eyes. "Family shows up when it matters. You made that clear a long time ago." My father's voice cut through the tension, hard and brittle. "You owe this family, Cody." I turned to him. He was shaking, whether from anger or fear I couldn't tell. For the first time, he looked smaller than I remembered. "No," I said quietly, pulling something from my jacket pocket. "I don't owe this family." I placed Mr. Harris's wooden ruler in the center of the table. The grain was darkened from years of use, the engraving still sharp. "Build straight. Even when no one's watching. I owe him," I said. The ruler landed with a soft, final sound, like a gavel on truth. My father stepped closer, face flushed. "You think this makes you better than us? Some kind of hero?" "No," I said. "It just means I stopped pretending." Evan muttered something about pride, about money wasted, but I didn't listen. My mother's tears came quietly, the kind born from too many years of silence. I gathered the documents back into the folder and slid it toward them. "If you ever want to understand what legacy really means," I said, "read these." Then I turned to leave. "Cody," my mother called out softly. "Please." I paused at the doorway, one hand on the frame. "You taught me that love has limits," I said without turning around. "But Mr. Harris taught me that integrity doesn't." Outside, the sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that carry both rain and mercy. I walked to the Corvette, each step lighter than the last. Behind me, the house stayed still. No shouting, no apologies. Just the quiet hum of realization settling in. As I opened the car door, I caught a glimpse through the window. The three of them standing around the table, staring at that simple wooden ruler like it was a mirror they didn't want to face. I started the engine, the rumble breaking the silence. Then I drove away, leaving the house and everything crooked inside it, behind. Inside, the camera would linger where I'd left it, the ruler still lying straight on the table. A symbol of the lines we choose to live by and the ones we finally stop bending. Franklin's a small town. News moves here faster than the wind, especially when it's about one of their own. By Monday morning, everyone knew about the Harris Home Project. The local paper, the Franklin Gazette, ran the story on the front page. "Veteran builds more than homes. He rebuilds hope." There was a picture of me shaking hands with the mayor. Standing beside the first family the foundation helped, a single mother of 2, smiling like someone who finally believed in tomorrow again. Rachel framed that article and hung it in my office. "So you don't forget," she said. "But if small towns love heroes, they also attract ghosts." A few days later, my brother started posting online. Photos of the old house, captions dripping with self-pity. "Funny how family means nothing when you've got a Corvette and a TV crew." He left us with nothing. At first, I ignored it. You can't argue with people who are more interested in being victims than being honest. But the posts spread. And soon people began whispering again, the kind of whispers I'd grown up hearing. Only this time, "Franklin didn't buy it," Rachel commented once. "Simple and clear. He didn't abandon his family. He just stopped letting them use him." Then Tommy, my 19-year-old apprentice, shared the Gazette article with a caption of his own. "He's the reason I have a job and a future. That's the only family that matters." And Mrs. Coleman, the widow whose porch I'd rebuilt 2 winters ago, wrote something that silenced the whole thread. "The boy who helped me fix my roof in the pouring rain didn't do it for cameras. He did it because that's who he is." By the end of the week, Franklin had chosen its side, and it wasn't theirs. Father lost 2 major investors in his firm when word got out about his family meeting. The same people who once admired him now distanced themselves quietly, citing ethical concerns. My brother's business collapsed soon after. The house foreclosed. His social media accounts suddenly deactivated. I didn't celebrate any of it. I didn't need to. Some reckonings arrive on their own. Instead, I poured my time into the Harris Home project. Every new build, every family we helped, felt like adding another brick between me and the man I used to be. Rachel noticed the change. "You don't carry it the same way anymore," she said one evening while we painted the nursery for a family of 4. "I guess I don't have to," I told her. "The weight's not mine anymore." The months passed, steady as the rhythm of hammers on fresh wood. The sound that once reminded me of my old house now meant progress. Peace. But peace doesn't always stay quiet. It was late one night, long after dinner, when Rachel walked into the living room. The only light came from the lamp beside me and the soft reflection of the Corvette parked under the porch. I was reading reports from our next project when she stopped by the window, her face pale. "Cody." Something in her tone made me look up. She pulled the curtain back an inch. "Your parents are outside." For a moment, I didn't move. The air felt heavier, that kind of silence before a storm. I stood, looked out the window, and saw them through the glass, 2 figures by the mailbox, half lit by the porch light, uncertain, smaller than I remembered. Rachel turned to me. "What do you want to do?" I looked past her, to the Corvette gleaming red in the dark. That car used to mean freedom. Tonight it meant distance, the kind I'd earned. I exhaled slowly. "Let them wait," Rachel didn't argue. She just nodded and let the curtain fall. Outside, the porch light hummed softly, throwing long shadows across the gravel drive, 2 outlines that would stay there for a while. Hoping I'd come out, but I didn't. Not this time. A year can change everything, not just the calendar, but the way the air feels when you breathe it. Franklin had gone through another summer by the time I stood at the edge of the new construction site. The 5th house of the Harris Home project was almost finished. Morning light spilled across the white siding, the smell of fresh lumber and paint mixing with Tennessee air. Volunteers hammered, sawed, and laughed, the kind of laughter that didn't ask for anything in return. I leaned against a fence post, watching Tommy climb down a ladder. He wasn't that shy kid anymore, the one who couldn't even look a man in the eye when he first showed up with calloused hands and no direction. His shirt was stained with dust and sweat, his face sunburned, but there was pride in his stride. He walked up, holding something in his hand. Mr. Harris's old wooden ruler. "The same one that started it all, sir," he said, offering it to me with a grin. "You built this right." I took it from him gently, feeling the grooves under my fingertips, the faint smell of cedar still clinging to it. "Straight," I said, smiling, "even when no one's watching." Tommy nodded, his eyes shining the way mine once did when I first believed I could be more than what people thought. Then he jogged back to help the others finish the porch. Behind me, Rachel slipped her arm around my waist. She wore that same faint smile she'd had on our wedding day, quiet, proud, and full of something that never needed words. The sound of laughter carried across the yard. Families stood together near the new house, children chasing each other around the swings we'd built last week. No speeches, no cameras, just gratitude. For a while, we stood in silence, watching the house become a home. When I finally spoke, it was mostly to myself. I thought revenge would feel better. Rachel turned to look at me, brow raised. I smiled faintly. Turns out, peace lasts longer. She leaned her head against my shoulder, and for the first time in a long time, I believed that. Later that afternoon, the town gathered around the front yard. Someone had covered a small bronze plaque with a cloth. The mayor gestured for me to pull it off, but I shook my head. "Let them do it," I said, nodding to the volunteers. Tommy tugged the cloth free, revealing the words engraved beneath the sun: Harris Home Project, built with integrity by the people of Franklin. A ripple of applause spread quietly through the crowd, not loud, but full, like the sound of belonging. I traced the engraving with my thumb, thinking of Mr. Harris, the man who gave me a job. A lesson and a ruler that measured more than inches. It measured character. Somewhere behind me I heard someone whisper, "He rebuilt this whole town." But that wasn't true. I didn't rebuild it. I just gave it something straight to stand on. As the crowd began to disperse, I walked toward the Corvette parked by the curb. The afternoon sun hit the hood just right, setting off a shimmer of red that looked almost alive. I ran my hand across the paint, smooth, warm, steady, and smiled. Rachel caught up, laughing softly. "You still love that car?" "It's not the car," I said, opening the door. "It's what it stands for." She tilted her head. "Freedom?" "Family," I said. "The kind you build, not the kind you're born into." I got in, started the engine, and glanced once more at the crowd. The families, the workers, Tommy waving from the porch, Rachel's reflection in the glass beside me. "They skipped my wedding," I said quietly, the Corvette rumbling beneath me. "But I built a family anyway." The tires rolled over the gravel as the camera pulled back, catching the sunlight glinting off the hood, the plaque shining behind me, and the sound of children's laughter fading into the distance.